Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I really do like the university vibe. I think 10 years from now, you're going to look back, for those of you who go to school here, and it's going to be a moment you really appreciate. So take advantage. It's an opportunity to take risks. Not that you can't take risks for anything in life, but there's a lot that can be done here. So I want to talk about generative AI. Who here has heard of generative AI now? Yeah, pretty much everybody. So what is generative AI? Let's get this thing rolling. Uh-oh. Oh, there it goes. All right. We'll get to the picture in a second. But what is generative AI? Well, it's systems designed to learn from data to essentially generate new data. Because language, images, audio, video, it's data, right? We can break it down to data. And generative AI takes that data and learns how to generate new data. Anyone know why this picture's up here? Anyone seen this picture before? What's wrong with it? Anything? Just yet, what's wrong? Why is it fake? Yeah. Yeah. That's not right. Anyone, if you zoom in on here, it's a pretty weird water bottle. But did people think this was real? For how long? I mean, you've all seen this, right? This is a fake image of a very prominent leader in the world who probably didn't appreciate it. But it was fake, but it wasn't so fake that you didn't know. But kind of the positive is it wasn't so real that you couldn't tell. So it's an interesting case study, and we can do some very interesting things, but we can also detect these things right now. In fact, most of the anti-deep learning technology to detect these things are quite accurate, 99% plus accurate. Those will change over time, but we can detect this. But let's look into some other examples in generative AI. I might just have to point this better. Thank you. I work in the entertainment space. BENlabs works with brands, creators, entertainment, advertising. So I want to pull some of these examples from that because it's very interesting. If you think about it, entertainment has a plethora of data. YouTube has billions of videos uploaded all the time. You know, Mr. Beast's latest video, I think, is at over 80 million views in a couple days. There's just so much content in entertainment that you can do some really interesting things. So what are people doing with this in this industry? You're good. I can do this. Who's seen this? The CocaCola masterpiece. This one is a little less known than the Pope one, but it's very interesting. So Coca-Cola, a huge brand with huge budgets, used generative AI to show this image of a hand moving around paintings. It wasn't only AI. It was AI in collaboration with designers and human experts, but they used AI to create a very compelling visual story of Coke moving through art. This is very interesting. Coke, a huge brand, gets on generative AI to help them do something, and this was in the entertainment and advertising space, very well received, a very good ad. So this one's really interesting with visual. Oh, I'm gonna go back. AI Fashion Week. If anyone's here in fashion, they literally did a thing called the AI Fashion Week, where the goal was to work with AI technologies such as DALL-E 2 and generative image technology to generate fashion and work with experts in the area to bring new pieces to life in collaboration with data technologies. We estimate that $150 to $275 billion in profits could increase thanks to these types of tools in fashion. It just lets them move much faster, be more creative, and collaborate with data-driven systems, which is really hard in the creative space. It's really hard to have a collaborator that's not a human when you're trying to think about the latest fashion trends. Next one, the Masters Golf Tournament. This one I actually find quite interesting. The Masters does not strike me as a top tech company, but they did something very cool. So they've got thousands or even hundreds of thousands of videos of people golfing, and they used AI to understand that scene, used the large language model to describe it, and then they auto-generated narration. And they even fine-tuned that model in order to use the right golf language. So now they can upload these videos to YouTube that are little clips of golf that they don't have to pay someone to go and narrate and explain what's going on. That is big value. That's generating real traffic for the Masters and people into golf, and it's automating a huge and monumental task. So this to me is just super interesting that companies, even in the golf space, are looking at this technology and trying to figure out how to do it, and they're successfully doing it. Anyone heard of this one? We knew it would come here. So in the influencer marketing space, this one's very interesting for a lot of reasons. So it started out as an influencer named Karen who was like, I can use AI, large language models, to represent myself to my audience. So she charged, anyone want to guess how much a minute? Pretty simple, $1 a minute, to basically interact with her bot. It would talk to you, you could talk to it. It's basically like a large language model trained on yourself. And this enabled her to scale her interaction in a much more personal way with her audience. Seems, great, right? She estimated she would make $5 million a month from this technology with the growth she was seeing. People, though, took it to a bad place, and so they had to shut it down. But that doesn't mean we can't fix some of these things. So there are people out there, there are creators, there are brands, there are organizations like the Masters Golf Tournament that are looking at this technology, and they're looking to push those boundaries and figure out how we can use it to better engage with our audiences. And that's exciting. I think there's going to be a lot of more personalized content for people. There's going to be a lot more personalized experiences. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the perils of this, which we've heard about today, but also why we should be excited, and then how you can try to stay ahead in your, your career, your studentship, your companies. Oh, and the last one, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. TubeBuddy is a tool that we have, and what we've done with this tool is you can bring in your YouTube context. We do it automatically for you. Anyone create content on YouTube? Any YouTubers? Yeah, we got some over here. There's always at least a few. TubeBuddy will basically take in that content, suggest content ideas for you, title ideas, descriptions, automatically using your own data to help you be a better creator. So there's just tons of examples of how to generate cool things, but what are some of the perils on the path ahead? 4 that I wanted to share today, though there's many more. We've talked a lot about some of these, but hallucinations is the word we're using right now for things that generative AI does on accident that are not real. So if you ask ChatGPT a question about what's the fastest land animal and it tells you a whale, it's not true, unfortunately. But it doesn't know it's not true. So there's a difference between the second of misinformation and hallucinations. Hallucinations is the model trying its best to answer your questions, but giving you misinformation on accident. So those are what we call hallucinations. They are actually very common. It's one of the challenges using the technology right now that's anything factual based. It's not super codified because it will hallucinate things that aren't real. One thing we tried to use it for early on was like, maybe you're a brand and you want to find the best creators to work with to talk about your brand, ambassadors for you. You go ask ChatGPT, who are the best influencers out there? It's like, here's the 10 best people for you. Gives you their handles on Instagram. You go plug them in, they don't exist. And so it gets you psyched up because you're like, wow, this is amazing. This looks so awesome. You describe these perfect creators for me, but they're not real. So hallucinations are really hard to deal with because you spend a lot of time trying to backtrack that information. Deepfakes and misinformation we've heard a lot about today. Obviously a lot of legal risks there with deepfakes. We've seen some of this. Do you think this image is real? No. We would call this a deepfake. Any of us could be deepfaked fairly easily now. If someone, like was mentioned earlier today, records your voice or your image or a movie of you, it doesn't actually take that much individual data to tweak these algorithms to represent you. So this is obviously very dangerous, very painful if it's used inappropriately, but as we saw in the previous talk, you can use a deepfake of you, an artificial version of you, to do good things, to represent yourself in ways that can scale you and do other things. Misinformation, this is one that maybe scares me the most because text is so easy to generate. We know websites like Reddit and other social media platforms are having more bots putting out information on their sites than ever before. They're just bombarded with GPT-type text, and it's harder to detect because it's more real, and it's just kind of this massive information that's not good. And one thing that I find interesting about both of these things is depending on when you were born, you're much more better at detecting them. Is anyone's parents or grandparents very good at detecting misinformation? If your parents are like mine, my mom's like, I saw this thing on Facebook, I'm a little worried, And about 3 seconds into her description, I'm like, that's not real. And she's like, how do you know? I'm like, it's just not real. But if you talk to a college student, they trust nothing. Everything is fake. They've kind of grown up in this age of like, there's a lot of bad information out there. I don't trust anything. So I think on some ways, as a culture, we're training ourselves to not trust things. And that's maybe bad, but that's kind of how it's becoming. Another peril is it's non-differentiated. So if all of us today use ChatGPT to say, give me an introduction speech, we'd all be probably saying the same speech when we got up here. And so you end up in this world of like average. Everything's average. Anyone use like the autocomplete on Outlook or Gmail in your email? You're like, oh, that's great. I love it. Tab, finish. You're now essentially changing your language to represent the average language. And so one of the perils, I think, is that it's removing creativity in some ways because it's pushing everyone to tools that are easy to use. And they're so easy to use, we just hit enter. And so that's something I think to be aware of. And then last but certainly not least is IP infringement. This data to train these models didn't come from nowhere. This data was generated by all of us. You maybe don't know it, but it's likely that your footprint out there on the internet got sucked into one of these models and was used to generate something. You're not getting anything for that. You were never asked about it. Maybe it wasn't yours to own, but there is definitely data that was not meant to be used that was pushed into these models. And look, a lot of innovation is kind of like move and ask questions later. I get that. But there are now things we have to ask questions about. What is going to happen when people stop creating data? If everyone just keeps using large language models, who's making new things? I don't know. So I think these are 4 things we really need to watch out for. But that being said, if people know Mark Andreessen, he recently had a really good post about why AI is going to save the world. And he has a good quote that I think is really relevant for us. He said, the era of artificial intelligence is here, and boy, are people freaking out. Fortunately, I'm here to bring the good news. AI will not destroy the world. In fact, it may save it. Which I tend to believe is true. I think technology is always scary. It always is hard to understand. It's always got real power for good and for evil. But I think that if we use it correctly, and many of us here will probably be at the forefront of that, we can do some really good things. So what are some of the potentials? Number 1, it's an ability to focus on your expertise. Some of you here are probably not designers, but maybe you want to create a LinkedIn post or something out there in the world. You can go to Midjourney. Does anyone, use Midjourney? Yeah, that's a pretty good one for generating images. You can get a really cool image automatically in a few minutes, a few seconds, and you're on your way, and you're focused maybe on what you care more about, which is writing your content. So AI, I really do think, is helping people, especially in the creative space. If you think about a YouTuber, they are the script writer, the actor, the content producer, the editor, the marketer, the brand negotiator. They have all of these jobs that they were never trained on, right? They went out and wanted to be a YouTuber or an Instagrammer, and they don't know what they're doing. AI can come in and say, hey, here's like the basics of SEO. Here's how you should think about editing. Here's some things that can really help you. And so I think that's really cool because as all of us can use less of our time on things that aren't our unique capabilities, we can spend more of our time on things that do make us unique. Next is increased scale and automation. You can do a lot more when things are helping you at a click of a button. That being said, as we talked about, some of that's not always right. It could hallucinate, it could give you bad information, so you have to be careful. But I've already even seen in my own life, like, I don't use Google for restaurant recommendations anymore. I use ChatGPT because it will give me a pretty quick description of the restaurant right there. And like, I could go dig through that and everything, but ChatGPT is like, boom, here it is, here's a description, here's why it's good. I will say sometimes the restaurants they're closed. Like, it doesn't know that they've been closed, and so I'm like, ChatGPT got me again. But it can scale you, and it's only $20 a month right now. So for not a lot of money, you can have a pretty interesting type of experience where you can scale yourself and do new things and move faster than ever before. And if you're not using these technologies, you should be. Even though they're not everything and they've got problems, if you want to be on that cutting edge, if you want to be the first people figuring it out, you need to be using them when they're not great, when they have issues. Next is AI collaboration. Don't act like this is AI replacing you. Act like it's AI scaling you, or your team, or your organization, or even your family maybe. Like if you have to negotiate a family treaty and you go to ChatGPT, it might help you. There's just a lot it can do to be a collaborative experience right now. And I think someone mentioned earlier that they're not afraid AI taking jobs. It's more that people using AI. And I think that's true. And I would even say that AI in some ways isn't a new thing. It's just technology. It's a new technology, and technology always brings change. So figure out how to use it, figure out how to collaborate with it. And then last but not least, one thing I think is super interesting is there's limitless growth potential theoretically with artificial intelligence. We don't know how good this can get. There's a lot of belief that it can get really good and a lot of fear about that, and maybe it can. But as we keep making it better, it's kind of like leveling up your automated collaborator. You know, as OpenAI does its research and makes things better, as more people come in and make it better, as we tune these things and tweak these things, it has a theoretical limitless possibility to help us. And you could also say that it has a limitless possibility to hurt us, but I think that's now within our control to try to figure out. But what should you do about all this? How can you stay ahead? I want to talk about 4 things and then end with one big thing. Yeah, this is a good image. Huh? I'm going to actually end with the first one, and I'm going to start at the second one. So talent and expertise. There's a lot of people that have knowledge about how to use these tools that is magnitudes ahead of the average. Get those people, learn from them, understand them, become one of them. Talent is going to be really important on anything cutting edge to move it forward faster. So if you want to be there, you know, learn about it, use it, understand it, join companies that are trying to push the edge. You're going to fail. That's going to happen. But you can push and grow and really become something special. Culture of innovation. Don't be afraid to do something new. We have records of companies that rose to the top and fell to the bottom because they were afraid to step out of their comfort zones. You can be smart about that. You shouldn't bet everything on something new. But if you won't take that step, someone else is going to take it. And yeah, they'll maybe fail, they'll maybe stumble, they'll maybe have some issues, but the earlier you start taking these steps, the faster you'll start to learn, the faster you'll be on the cutting edge. So don't let change or innovation scare you as a person, as a company, as an organization. And then just monitor and adapt. Like anything, use it, monitor, understand, and adapt what you're doing. If you can just do these things, you know, bring in great talent, really strive to grow your own talent if you're a company to do these things, have a culture of innovation, and just keep monitoring what you're doing, learning from your failures, and adapting, you will be able to move forward with this technology. That doesn't mean it won't be painful. It doesn't mean you won't make missteps and have challenges. It doesn't mean that maybe that ChatGPT is going to hallucinate something and you're going to believe it and look like an idiot. But you will make progress. And then the last thing I want to kind of end on is it all starts with the data. You have unique data that separates you from everything else. Everyone else that's relying on the generalized large language models, generative, image models, video, audio, they're using the same kind of data set running through the model. But you can fine-tune or adapt these models to your space, to your data. We just saw that from Pattern, how they were doing that. This is where you're going to be differentiating. And if you don't have good data practices right now, you need them. The world is moving to data-centric, AI-centric decision-making and collaboration. And if your data is a mess, you're never going to get there and you're never going to win. So get the necessary context in your data. That's going to allow you for more differentiation. Have strong data practices. Start with something small if you haven't already done this. Get those data practices rolling. Bring in like one of these tools. Put your data in it. A simple way to do that is just prompt it. You don't even have to fine-tune it. Just say, hey, I'm a creator and my last 4 video titles were this. What should my next video title be? It's going to be much stronger than just saying, hey, AI, give me a good video title. Because maybe you're a creator that talks about rock climbing and the AI thinks you should talk about scuba diving. Like, that's not very helpful. So use your unique assets to train it and to help it be better, and that's going to make it more accurate for you. So if you're one takeaway from this, I think it's the data. And the cool thing is that hasn't changed. It's always been the data with AI and technology. So if you haven't really invested in that space, invest now. It will pay dividends now, in the future, in any new AI technology that comes out. And then just keep learning, keep innovating. You're here, so that probably means you want to be on the cutting edge. Don't be afraid of it. It's going to do some really special things. It's also going to do some really stupid things, but that's okay. Like, we'll get there together. And yeah, so generative AI, I think it's here to stay. It's already making a huge difference in the entertainment space. I'm sure all of you have seen it already make a difference in things you've interacted with. And let's help make it good. Let's help make it something we're proud of that's really helping us move the world and our companies forward, and not something that we're disappointed with. So thank you.